Discover the incredible journey. What happens when California unexpectedly leaves the USA forever? Riley Thompson stood frozen in front of the TV, her heart pounding in her chest. News anchors were breathlessly announcing that California had declared independence. The words felt surreal, like the plot of a movie that nobody wanted to see. She glanced over at her teenage son, Jake, who was glued to the screen, a mix of excitement and fear flickering across his face. This was not just a headline, it was their reality stuffed into a tight knot of uncertainty. Maplewood, a town where everyone knew each other, felt different that day. The familiar chatter in the grocery store turned into hushed conversations, whispers about job security, and what this meant for their lives. Riley's mind raced back to a week ago, when she lost her job at the factory. She shook her head, trying to push away the growing anxiety that filled the void of her unemployment. "What are we going to do, Mom?" Jake's voice broke through her thoughts, pulling her back to the present. The weight of her responsibilities tugged at her with every passing day. She wanted to support Jake's dreams of going to college, but now that seemed more distant than ever. The American dream felt like a joke played on them amid the whispers of independence from the United States. Riley forced a smile. "We'll figure it out, Jake. Just like we always do." As the days unraveled, familiar faces began to fade from Maplewood. Each empty storefront felt personal, like a piece of her support system was being snatched away. The echoes of laughter from neighbors turned into fear-laden discussions about loyalty and identity. Riley found herself standing on the sidelines, her own worries masked behind a veil of determination for Jake's future. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. Riley's heart raced at the upcoming town hall meeting. When she was chosen to speak for the community, it felt like the world was placing a spotlight on her. The room swelled with families, each one eerily connected through their fears. As she stepped forward, she could feel the knot in her stomach twist tighter. "We are stronger together," she shouted, her voice soaring above the rest as the crowd nodded, but as she spoke, she realized that not everyone felt the same. Opinions split like branches on a tree. There were those who dreamed of a brighter future, while others held tight to traditions they feared losing. For every hand raised in support, another would be clenched in dismay. Just as hope flickered from their united front, doubt crept in, forcing Riley to wonder, should she fight for the community or prioritize her family's survival? The energy in the room shifted, anger sparking debates and shouting matches, echoing the very division she feared. And there she stood, at the intersection of her personal struggles and the community's new reality, grappling with frail identities in a landscape altered forever. In that moment, Riley realized she must confront the profound complexities of loyalty and choose who she was going to be in this unfolding world. Tears pricked her eyes as she took in the weight of the situation. Could she rally her community amidst this chaos? Or was this the end of everything she held dear? The future loomed uncertain, leaving her heart racing with possibilities and dread. Would she have the courage to fight for something bigger than herself? The shifting tides of change whispered in her ears, urging her to take a stand, yet leaving her with only questions lingering like shadows on a fading wall. Riley woke the next morning to the sound of chaos outside her window. Voices filled the air, rising and falling like waves crashing against a shore. She peered out, spotting a crowd gathered at the community park. People waved signs, some of them reading "Unity Now," and others declaring "No Independence." The sharp contrast in sentiments tore at her heart. "Mom! Are we going?" Jake called from the kitchen, his voice buzzing with energy. It was hard to resist the excitement that hung in the air. "Just give me a minute," she replied, her voice shaky. She needed to gather herself, to find the words that would resonate with her son and the community they both felt at risk of losing. As they walked to the park together, clouds hung in the sky, thick and gray. The tension was palpable, and Riley couldn't shake the feeling that the storm wasn't just meteorological. This was the kind of storm that shook foundations, rattled hearts, and threatened to wash away everything. They reached the fray, where people from all walks of life stood with expressions of either anger or hope. Riley's eyes fell on the local bakery owner, Mrs. Rodriguez. The woman's hands trembled as she clutched her sign, and for a split second, their eyes met. It was a moment of shared understanding, a reminder of what they were fighting for. Riley smiled sadly and looked away, wondering if her own heart still belonged to Maplewood. "Mom, I think we should vote for unity," Jake said, his voice steady. "If we stay together, we can make things work, right?" The innocence in his eyes crushed her. How had life become so complicated so quickly? "Yes, Jake." Together she whispered, but doubt gnawed at her gut. What did together even mean now? The crowd began to ripple, emotions running high as passionate speakers took the stage. Each voice built a wave of enthusiasm and tension, urging people to choose a side. Riley felt the pull towards unity, for solidarity among neighbors to lift them from despair, and then, something shifted. A young man climbed onto the platform, his conviction bubbling over. "We deserve better. We need to fight for who we are and who we want to become. Let us draft a new future together." His fervor ignited cheers and applause, but it was the fervor that resonated with Riley, cutting deep into her insecurities. As echoes of cheering surged around her, Riley squeezed Jake's hand. She needed to channel all her strength into something tangible. "Let us go talk to Mrs. Rodriguez," she urged, guiding Jake towards the older woman who seemed lost in thought. "Mrs. Rodriguez," Riley said gently, "we need to come together for those who rely on us. We can't let fear divide us." Tears pooled in the woman's eyes, and she nodded, weighty with acceptance. "I've been scared, dear. Scared of what tomorrow brings. But maybe, just maybe, we can build something new." Riley could feel her heart race with a budding hope. Maybe they were on the cusp of change. Maybe she could harness that energy and transform it into something powerful for her community. But as they turned to join the chatter about plans for a community meeting to unify their voices, a loud crash interrupted them. A nearby sign fell, and a scuffle broke out among a few individuals who clearly had opposing views. The atmosphere shifted to one of chaos, uncertainty sparking anger, and Riley's heart sank. "Jake, stay close!" she yelled, panic swelling as she struggled to keep her eyes on her son amidst the chaos. In that moment, she realized that hope and fear were intertwined like a double helix of humanity. And as the crowd's voices rose and fell, Riley couldn't help but wonder, with the storm brewing both within and outside, where would they go from here? Would she be able to sway the tide back toward unity? Or was this division deeper than she feared? As tempers flared, she steeled herself. Now more than ever, she would have to confront what happened next. Riley's heart raced as chaos erupted around her. She could hear shouting, feel the tension thick in the air, like a rubber band stretched just before it snapped. Instinctively, she pulled Jake closer, her fingers gripping his small hand, anchoring him to her. "Stay right next to me," she urged, her voice barely above the commotion. Her eyes darted across the crowd, searching faces for any signs of danger. Suddenly, a larger man pushed through the crowd, shouting, "This is our land. We want to be silenced." His words fueled more anger, and a wave of shouts surged through the crowd. Another voice cut through the fray, a woman with a piercing tone demanding respect and conversation instead of violence. "Enough!" she cried, raising her arms in an attempt to calm everyone. "Can we please discuss this like neighbors?" Riley felt a flicker of hope in the woman's plea. Maybe there were still those who believed a peaceful resolution was possible. Yet, the scuffle continued, fists flying and voices raised. Riley steeled herself, trying to block out the noise, focusing instead on her son. Jake's wide eyes mirrored her own fear. Mom, what's happening? His small voice trembled, and she knelt down to his level, forcing a smile despite the turmoil. Just some people disagreeing, honey. But we can make it better, she declared, wishing desperately that her words could wield power. They needed a lifeline. As the chaos raged on, something in Riley shifted. She stood taller, drawing strength from her connection to the community and the hope she had felt only moments before. Jake, let us go help that woman. Without waiting for a reply, she strode toward the speaker who had called for calm, her heart pounding. We need to stand together, she shouted, her voice rising above the crowd. If we don't stand united, we'll fall apart. People began to turn, some nodding, some still caught in heated arguments, but others were listening. The energy shifted, and she could feel the slightest hint of something. Was it a collective awareness? The woman blinked at Riley, recognizing the urgency in her words. Exactly. We need to remember who we are. We're neighbors, not enemies. Let us remind each other of that. Riley turned and scanned the crowd. We have more in common than we think. Just look around. Our kids play together, our families share dinners. Is this how we want Maplewood to be defined? The noise began to quiet, faces softening, even if just a little. Jake, emboldened by his mother's energy, stepped forward. Yeah. Friends stick together. He called out, his youthful spirit catching fire among some of the onlookers. A few chuckles broke the tension, and a ripple of solidarity began to form. Riley felt something awaken inside her. The fear that had gripped her heart began to loosen, replaced by the warmth of hope. If they could just find a way to connect, to listen, she believed they could turn the tide. Let us talk, everyone. She shouted, her voice steady now. Let us share our worries and dreams together. Just as she felt the winds of change shifting, she noticed a familiar face slide into the scene. Mr. Henderson, the local contractor. He had been a pillar of the community for decades. But as he approached, his face twisted with anger. Riley's heart sank. What are you doing? He yelled at her, fists clenched. You can't just ignore the problems. You think this is a game? In that moment, Riley saw the lines of division deepen. What she had hoped for wasn't merely between neighbors anymore, it was tearing at the fabric of their very community, threatening everything she once held dear. With the chaos swirling around them and a community hanging in the balance, Riley realized they were at a breaking point. Could she persuade them back from the edge? Her breath hitched. This wasn't just her fight anymore, it was for every single family, every friendship lingering on the edge of fracturing. How could she lead them away from fear and back to unity? As the crowd grew silent, all eyes turned to her. Riley felt the weight of their hopes resting on her shoulders. What could she say to bridge this gap before them? Would she have the strength to rally her neighbors together, or would this division tear Maplewood apart for good? The storm may have only just begun. Riley took a deep breath, the air thick with anticipation and tension. The faces around her were a blend of anger, confusion, and the barest glimmers of hope. Despite her racing heart, she felt an unfamiliar surge of determination. This was not just about Maplewood anymore, it was about the very essence of community, of belonging. Mr. Henderson, I understand you're angry, and we all are. She called out, her voice steady despite the storm brewing around them. But anger won't solve anything. We have so much at stake here: our families, our friends, our homes. He narrowed his eyes, but she pressed on, her words flowing like water over jagged rocks. We can't let fear dictate our actions. We need to talk to one another, to listen. That's how we become stronger. She gestured to the people around them. Look at us. We're not just a crowd, we're a community. We've laughed together, cried together, built our lives here. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some people nodded, visibly pondering her words. A man near the front closed his eyes for a second, as if feeling the weight of the moment. Remember last summer? The block party? Riley continued, recalling the warmth and laughter that once filled Maplewood. We played games, we danced, we came together. This is our community, it belongs to all of us. Just because we've been through hard times doesn't mean we can't find common ground, she emphasized, locking eyes with Mr. Henderson. If we don't work through this together, who is going to suffer the most? Jake tugged at her shirt, looking up with wide eyes. Mom, can't we just be friends like before? The innocence of her son's plea struck a chord. Riley felt a collective heartstring resonate amongst the gathered crowd. She watched as Mr. Henderson's face shifted, the anger softening slightly. Maybe we do need to talk, he said, his voice rising above the murmurs. Yes. Riley seized on the moment, her spirit ignited. Let us set aside our defenses for just a minute. Each of us has something to share. Let us start listening instead of shouting. We can heal the rifts. People began to shift, their tension easing just enough for an ember of dialogue to spark. One by one, others began to speak, sharing stories of their fears and hopes. A young woman stepped forward, visibly shaking yet fierce. I'm scared my kids won't have the life we wanted for them here. But I don't want fighting, I want solutions. Her voice wavered but was met by nods of agreement. I've lived here my whole life, another neighbor chimed in. We've always come through for one another. We need to remember that. Riley felt the energy begin to truly shift. Conversations began to flow, little pockets of dialogue springing up, even laughter breaking out in spots. As their voices mingled, Riley glanced over at Jake, who watched with a mixture of awe and pride. She gripped his hand, grounding herself in this moment of connection. But just when it seemed that hope could snowball into something more substantial, an echo of a siren cut through the buzz. It grew louder, drawing everyone's gaze towards the end of the street. Panic glanced through the crowd as they turned to see police cars pulling in, lights flashing like a bad dream. The laughter faltered, replaced by uncertainty. Mr. Henderson scanned the scene, his expression hardening once more as authority arrived. Stay calm, everyone. Riley yelled, adrenaline kicking in as she stepped forward again. We can't let this divide us. Remember what we just talked about. The tension returned, thickening the air like the humidity before a storm. Would the presence of law enforcement crush the fragile alliance they were beginning to form? Or could Riley find a way to keep the conversation going, even now? She could feel the stakes rising again. As she squared her shoulders, heart racing, she knew one thing, the real battle for Maplewood might just be beginning. What would it take to ensure their voices still mattered amongst the looming shadows of authority? The siren's wail crescendoed, a haunting reminder of the fragile peace that hung over the crowd. Riley felt a knot of fear tighten in her stomach. How had everything gone so wrong, so quickly? The familiar faces now looked like strangers caught in a whirlwind of uncertainty. A police officer stepped out of the car, surveying the scene. His badge glinted in the sunlight, a symbol of authority that somehow felt threatening. The crowd shifted uneasily, anxiety rippling through them like shockwaves. Riley's heart raced as she stepped closer to the officer, determined to communicate a sense of unity rather than division. Excuse me, she called out, raising her voice for all to hear. We're just having a community meeting. There's no trouble here, we're trying to come together. The officer nodded slowly, but his gaze remained skeptical. Ma'am, we received reports of a disturbance in the area. I need to assess the situation. Riley glanced at the faces around her. She could see doubt creeping back in. Mr. Henderson stood at the front, arms crossed, an uncertain look shadowing his features. Let him speak, Riley urged the crowd, trying to keep the energy positive. This is a chance to show that Maplewood is stronger together. A few people murmured in agreement, but she noticed some still shifting uncomfortably. Jake clutched her hand tighter, a mix of curiosity and fear in his wide eyes. She could see he was confused. Officer, what do you want us to do? Riley pleaded, keeping her voice steady even as the situation threatened to spiral out of control. We want to cooperate. The officer finally stepped forward, addressing the crowd. I need you all to remain calm. I'd like to hear from the people involved. What's happening here? Riley understood this was a chance to keep the conversation alive not just with the officer, but with each other. We're worried about our community, she said, glancing around the gathering. We're discussing our concerns, our hopes. Everyone has something to say. A hand shot up from the back. It was Mrs. Holloway, a retiree who had lived in Maplewood for decades. I remember when this neighborhood was filled with joy, she spoke, her voice trembling slightly. We shouldn't let fear take that away. We need to support one another. Exactly, Riley jumped in. If we can all speak openly, we can show that we want safety and understanding, not violence or confrontation. The officer's expression softened slightly, but skepticism still danced in his eyes. He was trained to react with caution, and Riley understood that. All right, let us hear what you have to say, he said slowly. But please remain orderly. The crowd seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief as Riley encouraged her neighbors to share their voices. They spoke of job losses, fears for their children, and the growing divisions that weighed them down. Each story united them further, weaving a tapestry of shared experience and resilience. Just as the air began to feel lighter, the officer received a call on his radio. We had reports of further protests nearby. We might need to disperse this gathering, the voice crackled through the device. Riley's heart sank. No. We have to stay here for each other. The officer hesitated, looking torn between duty and the passion he sensed in the crowd. Riley seized the moment, looking straight into his eyes. Please, don't break this up. This is what Maplewood is all about: connection, support. We need to stand together now. With his radio still buzzing, he glanced around at the mingled expressions of hope and determination. Perhaps there was more to this gathering than just a simple conversation. The weight of the moment hung heavy in the air, a silent plea for understanding, but conflict brewed just beyond their horizon. Would that call end their moment of unity? As the sirens faded into the distance, Riley felt the ground shifting beneath her. How much longer could they hold on to this fragile bond when the world outside threatened to pull them apart? The question loomed like storm clouds on a hot summer day, ready to unleash their tempest. Riley held her breath, her heart pounding in her chest. The officer's uncertainty hung in the air like the heavy scent of the approaching storm. Just then, Mrs. Holloway stepped forward again, her frail figure somehow exuding great strength. We are not a threat, she declared, her voice ringing clear amidst the tension. We are neighbors. We're here to heal, not to fight. The crowd responded with murmurs of agreement, the energy shifting. Riley felt a flicker of hope igniting among the worried faces. Jake's grip on her hand relaxed slightly, sensing the change too. This was their moment, a chance to prove that Maplewood could stand firm against fear, but the officer remained conflicted, his face taut. I understand, he said slowly, scanning the crowd. But I also need to ensure safety. There are reports of unrest not far from here. We can have a conversation, but we need to stay alert. Riley nodded, understanding that his instinct was to protect. We want that too, she insisted, raising her voice above the crowd, but not if it means tearing us apart. Let us talk about our problems instead of letting them push us apart. A murmur turned into a rallying cry, a wave of conviction rippling through the crowd. The officer seemed to draw strength from the unmistakable energy, shifting his weight slightly. The radio buzzed again, but he silenced it, taking a step back as if giving them a chance to voice their hopes and fears. What are you all so afraid of? Shouted a young man, his voice clear and brave. Doesn't it feel like we're stronger together? Exactly. Riley called back, feeling a surge of confidence. Empowered, the crowd began to share stories of resilience, lost jobs but determined minds, fractured neighborhoods but unbroken spirits. It was a tapestry of raw emotion weaving through every voice that as they spoke, something strange and beautiful blossomed. Riley could see faces lighting up, shoulders relaxing. Shouts of anger transformed into laughter, and tears reflected the strength found in vulnerability. She could feel it too, a collective heartbeat. Then, Jake, his brow furrowed in deep thought, piped up. "But what if they don't hear us?" His small voice cut through the air, a reminder of the fears still lurking. "We'll make sure they do," Riley said fiercely, her heart swelling. "Every voice matters." She looked at the officer again, hoping he was watching this transformation. "These are our stories, our community. We just need someone to listen." The officer's demeanor shifted, his skepticism giving way to contemplation. Perhaps there was more to this meeting than a simple disturbance. There was power in their unity that could transcend their visible divisions, but just then, another squad car pulled up, blue lights flashing in the distance. The crowd froze. Fear washed over them again like a cold wave. Riley's pulse raced, her instinct screaming that everything was about to erupt once more. The officer looked between the new arrivals and the crowd before raising his hands, signaling calm. "Stay here," he instructed, stepping toward the vehicle. The crowd held their breath, tension thickening the air as they watched. Riley turned to the people around her, every face marked with worry. "We can't let this break us," she whispered fiercely. "We have to hold on to each other." But uncertainty loomed ominously. Would they be able to weather this storm together? And what would happen if the officers couldn't see the strength in their unity? As the officer approached his colleagues, Riley squeezed Jake's hand tighter. The outcome felt like a delicate balance teetering on the edge of a knife. What revelation awaited them in this climax of converging paths? Would Maplewood emerge stronger, or would division seep through the cracks? Riley watched intently as the officer approached the newly arrived squad car. Her heart raced, each beat punctuating the tense silence. She felt Jake's small fingers tighten around hers, and she wondered if he could sense the hesitation hanging between them like a fragile thread. The new officers stepped out, their faces set, eyes scanning the crowd with guarded curiosity. Riley could see the confusion in their posture. Were they here to help or to escalate the situation? She clung to her hope, but doubt began to gnaw at her optimism. "Stay calm," she murmured to Jake. "We're still here together." Mrs. Holloway, strong and resolute, took a few steps forward. "We have stories to share," she said, her voice firm yet kind. "If you're here to listen, we will show you the heart of Maplewood." Riley felt the crowd shifting again, their collective breath held tight like a group of swimmers waiting to jump into the deep end. Their movement felt synchronized, like the ebb of ocean waves together. They were powerful. The officer who had first spoken glanced at his colleagues as if gauging their reactions, then turned back to the crowd. "All right," he said slowly, "let us hear what you have to say, then." With that invitation, a cascade of voices erupted. People spoke passionately about their struggles, heartaches, and the challenged lives they led. Each account poured out like an open tap, liberating fears and uncertainties. Laughter bubbled through the dark clouds, breathing life into their gathering. The voices wove a tapestry of community, a vibrant reminder of the power within shared experiences. "Last summer, the heat nearly got to my crops. But with friends and neighbors, we created a watering cycle. We saved each other's harvests," someone shared, their face lighting up with pride. The officer seemed to soften, visibly moved by the authenticity. He glanced back at his partner, who appeared less rigid now, nodding slightly at the unfolding stories. Then Jake tugged at Riley's sleeve, his eyes wide. "Look," he said, pointing toward the group. "They're smiling." Riley followed his gaze, her breath hitching in her throat. Yes, smiles. Hope was blooming before her eyes. Maybe, just maybe, they were starting to break through the barriers built by fear and misunderstanding. Yet, the arrival of the second squad car loomed like a shadow. In the back of her mind, Riley couldn't shake off the urgency to grab hold of the moment. "We can make a difference, everyone," she bellowed above the noise, her voice ringing clear. "We need to take this energy and talk about what we want for us, for Maplewood." The crowd chimed in, echoing her fervor, turning to each other and the officers with a shared resolve. But just before the officer could respond, a commotion broke out towards the edge of the gathering. A few individuals were arguing sharply, their anger a stark contrast to the hope blossoming in the hearts of the others, fists clenched and voices raised. Riley's stomach dropped. No, no. Not now. She thought frantically. The fragile unity was at risk. The fabric of their moment seemed on the verge of tearing apart. With her heart racing again, Riley felt the ground shifting beneath her. Would their shared strength withstand this new wave of dissent? Could they hold this community together against all odds? In that moment, she remembered the stories shared just moments before, the stories of resilience and unity. If they could harness that, maybe they could overcome this surge of conflict. Taking a deep breath, Riley stepped forward, unable to let fear drown out the hope they had fought so hard to build. The crowd looked to her, an unspoken question in their eyes. What would she say? As she opened her mouth to speak, a loud shout cut through the air, a voice filled with rage. You think we're just going to stand here? Riley's heart sank. Everything was on a precipice, balancing on the edge of division once more. What would happen to Maplewood now? Riley's heart pounded as the shout ricocheted through the crowd. The air thickened with tension, a dense fog of uncertainty clouding the moment. She could feel Jake's small hand slipping slightly from hers, the warmth of his grip wavering as fear crept in. Listen. She urged, raising her voice above the chaos. We're all in this together. This isn't the time to fight. But amid the emotions surging like a turbulent wave, a few voices shouted back in frustration. You don't know what we've been through. One man yelled. His face was flushed, fists clenched tight like coiled springs ready to explode. Mrs. Holloway stepped to Riley's side, her expression fierce yet tender, like a grandmother ready to defend her family. We do know. We've all felt the hurt in our hearts. Let us share that pain instead of tearing at each other. Riley felt that familiar flicker of hope ignite in her chest, a small spark in the expansive darkness. We need to keep talking, not fighting. That's how we heal, together. She called out, looking right into the eyes of the angry man. His gaze flickered for a moment, uncertainty dancing across his features. Slowly, the murmurs of dissent began to quiet, replaced by restless whispers. Faces turned hesitantly back toward her, wrestling with their emotions. The softening of the crowd felt like the turning of a tide, and as she inhaled deeply, Riley became aware of the crowd's need, thirsting for connection, aching for understanding. I want to hear your story, she said, her voice steady, coaxing. We all have scars. But if we share them, we can build something stronger. The man who had shouted took a small step forward, his expression shifting from anger to contemplation. You live in your own little world, lady. You don't get it. We've been neglected, forgotten. Why should we believe anything will change? Riley knew he spoke a truth that many felt. All around her, she saw nods of agreement echoing his frustration. Maybe you have been overlooked. But I see you. We see each other. If we talk about it, if we work together, we can make a change. A good one. Together. She observed the crowd's expressions, shifting gradually, uncertainty mingling with hope. Mrs. Holloway nodded alongside her, eyes wide, supporting her strength. This is our community. Together, we decide how to move forward. The officer, sensing the tide change, stepped closer, his voice calm. What do you want, Maplewood? Let us hear it. Riley felt the energy pulse around her, words itching to be released. Dream big. She shouted, her spirit brightening like the summer sun spilling through clouds. Let us create a town where everyone feels welcome. Where we can share resources. Ideas. Let us hold each other up. One by one, hands began to rise. We want more community gardens. Someone called out. A job fair. Added another. Laughter slowly started to bubble up as more voices echoed in, each idea sparking more enthusiasm. But then Jake's voice pierced through the joy. What about me? My friends from school, they never get to come play. Riley turned to her son, heart swelling. His innocent gaze caught everyone's attention. There was raw truth in his words. The needs of children often get overshadowed in adult conflicts. Would their resolve hold out for the youngest among them? Taking a moment to breathe, Riley held Jake's hand tighter. Yes. We need to think about our kids and their future. They should have a place to laugh and feel safe. The crowd shifted again, uncertainty chasing away doubt as eyes sparkled back at her. But behind them, the shadows of division lurked. Could they really stand united under this banner of hope, or would old grievances tear them apart again? As the cheers mingled with shouts of agreement, Riley felt a swell of energy. They were moving, working together. But in the distance, she could sense the tension still unresolved, like a storm waiting to burst. What would it take to genuinely unite them all? And could that wild, unyielding energy hold against the brewing storm? The crowd buzzed with energy, a tide of renewed hope. Riley felt the warmth spreading through her, but she also sensed a lingering unease. Mrs. Holloway's hand rested reassuringly on her shoulder, but eyes darted around, searching for cracks in the newfound unity. Are we really going to do this? The voice belonged to a woman with teary eyes, standing at the edge of the group, her gaze shifting uneasily. What happens when the talk stops and reality hits again? Riley took a breath, her heart thumping. It's okay to be scared, she replied gently. Change is never easy. But together, we can face whatever comes our way. It starts now, here. The woman nodded, slowly, tears glimmering as a small smile broke through her fear. And we protect each other, right? Yes. Jake shouted, enthusiasm radiating off him like sunlight. We can make a clubhouse. Where we all play. The crowd laughed, momentarily broken from the weight of their worries. Exactly. Riley beamed, her heart swelling at her son's innocent idea. Let us make a place where everyone, especially our kids, can feel safe. Where you can drop by, and your worries fade for just a moment. A man in back raised his hand. And what about parents? They need a support system too. Yes. Mrs. Holloway chimed in. An adult learning center. We can help everyone get back on their feet, jobs, skills, let us open doors. Amid the swelling conversations, laughter, and shouting ideas flooded the air banding together like a chorus. Riley clutched Jake's small hand tightly, sensing the fragile hope fluttering like the delicate wings of a butterfly. Yet just below this surface, something dark lingered. Could all these words transform into tangible change? Hey! A gruff voice cut through the harmony. Riley turned to a tall man with a scowl carving deep lines on his forehead. Dreaming is one thing. Reality is another. What guarantees do we have this will actually work? The laughter faded, and unease washed over the crowd once more. None, Riley replied, holding his gaze with unwavering courage. But we have each other, and together, we can lean on that hope until it becomes solid ground. A murmur spread along the crowd, uncertainty butting against the desire for connection. Suddenly, the officer stepped ahead, raising his hands for calm. If we want to move forward, let's lay down some ground rules. We need to commit who's willing to stand with us as a united front. One by one, people began to raise their hands again, fire blossoming within them, but that dark scowl from the man lingered in her mind. Riley listened to the pledges, the changing dynamics ticking in rhythm, her heart raced with the growing energy. Let us also remember those who feel overlooked, she added. We must prioritize creating opportunities for everyone. No one should feel forgotten again. Then, a child's cry shattered the gathering energy. Mom! They are taking my toy. Riley's pulse quickened. Jake! Her son cried out, disbelief in his voice. She turned, eyes scanning the crowd, looking for the source of distress. Moments of unity slipped away as confusion spread like dried leaves caught in a windstorm. Before she could react, she saw a group of teenagers stumbling into view, faces mischief-ridden, brandishing Jake's toy. Disbelief shivered through her. How quickly hope could unravel. "Stop!" Riley shouted, hurriedly trying to break through the thickening crowd. Would the grasp of division snatch away everything they had built in those few moments? The sound of delighted laughter rang out, a sharp contrast to the anxiety prickling her skin. And just like that, the crowd's fragile peace wavered again. This time, the storm brewing felt too close for comfort. How would she lead them back to unity? What could possibly calm this chaos again? Every ounce of strength she had mustered was about to be put to the real test. Could they overcome not only their fears of the past but also the division unfolding right before them? Would they find their strength amid the madness? Riley felt her heart drop as she rushed through the crowd, weaving past startled faces. The laughter from the teenagers charging away with Jake's toy pierced through her, a reminder of the fragility of their unity. Anger bubbled up inside her, but she quickly swallowed it down. "Jake, stay close!" she shouted, her voice barely a thread above the turmoil. "Mom, they're taking my toy!" he cried, eyes wide with disbelief, disappointment etched across his young face. Watching her son's innocence clashing with the gray of chaos, Riley felt a surge of determination. This wasn't just a moment of conflict, it was a reminder of everything Maplewood stood for and everything they were fighting against. "Hey!" she called out, taking a deep breath and summoning a calm that gradually replaced the panic. "Can we talk about this? Come on, this isn't who we are." The teenagers halted, taken aback by the fierceness in her voice. Around them, the crowd began to turn, drawn toward the confrontation like moths to a flame. "What's the point of fighting over something so small?" she challenged, locking eyes with one boy as she approached cautiously. "We've been trying to come together. Why not put those skills to a better use?" The boy, hesitating, shifted on his feet, glancing at his friends, uncertainty creeping into his bravado. "It's just a toy," he shrugged, but something had shifted. "Just a toy?" Jake echoed, voice trembling but fierce. "It's not just that. It's about friendship and respect." Riley's heart swelled with pride, watching her son find his voice. Laughter died down, and the murmurs of the crowd drew closer, sensing the crescendo building in a space once filled with chaos. "Look around," Riley continued, her voice steady, "remember how good it felt when we lifted each other up, when we shared joy instead of fear. Let us be the community we want, starting now." A few in the crowd nodded, a softening flicker of realization beginning to spread like warm sunlight banishing the dark clouds. She could feel the breath of possibility in the air. Finally, the boys exchanged glances, their bravado slipping away as empathy overtook their expressions. One of them stepped forward, the one who shouted earlier, and said softly, "We thought it was just for fun. We didn't mean to hurt anyone." "Then let us make it right," Riley encouraged, her heart racing. "You know, it takes more courage to unite than to tear apart." Bold words floated in the air, the remnants of anger draping like fading twilight. The first boy, still holding Jake's toy, slowly approached. "I'll give it back if you want to come play with us." Jake's eyes lit up, his smile radiant. "Really? You mean it?" "Yeah," the boy nodded, looking a little bashful. "It's better if we all have fun together." With a heart full of hope, Riley watched as the boys engaged, Jake beaming with joy, laughter bubbling back to life. That simple act pulled pieces of Maplewood back together. As people started to relax and chatter returned with energy, Riley felt the atmosphere shift again. They might just be able to rebuild something meaningful, something strong. "Let us share our stories, our dreams." She called to the crowd, urgency igniting her words. "This is the moment. We've all faced challenges. Let us ride this new tide together." Each neighbor began to share their aspirations, goals, hopes for their children, plans for a safe future where no one felt unheard. They spoke of what they needed, and the conversations created a comforting hum, woven with vulnerability and trust. Riley glanced at Mrs. Holloway, who stood at her side, face glowing with pride. The smile of solidarity rippled through the crowd. "We can do this," Riley declared, her voice rising higher above the din. As the gathering transformed from a group haunted by division to one pulsing with collective strength, she could finally see it. The light those shadows had cast on their hearts was fading. A warmth surrounded each of them, kindling bright embers of unity. "Let this be our promise," shouted one voice, and soon others chimed in. "We will help our neighbors. We will listen." Riley stood tall, heart swelling with pride, watching the spirits rekindle under the vast sky. They were resilient, ready to forge ahead, and this time, she fervently believed, together, they would find strength in community. As dusk settled over Maplewood, Riley looked at Jake, who smiled back with sparkles in his eyes. They defaced fears and broken down barriers together. "Mom, I love our town," Jake exclaimed, the innocence of his excitement striking a tender chord in her heart. And that was it. No matter what challenges they would face next, no matter how uncertain the future felt, they had each other. They forged a bond, a community reborn. "Me too, kiddo. Me too," she whispered, resolute as they joined those around them. But now, with the night thickening, Riley couldn't help but think about what would come next for Maplewood. What pressing challenges lay ahead? And it was then she realized. They were on this journey together. They would face it all, hand in hand, united by hope and dreams that reached far beyond the shadows. Now is the time to act. You need to subscribe now to stay connected and see how our journey continues. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help spread the message. Comment your thoughts and feelings about this inspiring end. And don't wait not even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need this transformative reminder of the strength of community.